Welcome to Enchanted Astrology Podcast with Ariel Smith as we take a look at the astrological forecast for the week of December 24th to December 30th. This is the very last week of 2025, and this week has a very grounded, very practical feeling to it. There's a lot of energy focused on our material experience. So whether that be work, responsibilities, commitments, just the systems that we move through and interact with every day. So it's a week that brings our attention back to how things actually function in our lives, the small little nuances there. So you may notice yourself thinking more about what's working and what's not, where your time goes, where did your energy go, where things feel smooth, and where they feel frustrating or heavy. So that's the tone of this week. It's not very loud. It's very exact, very precise. So all week long, the Sun, Mars, and Venus are traveling together in Capricorn. And Capricorn's energy, as we know, is about building something that lasts. It's about that effort, about our responsibility, the structure we bring to our lives, and how we are manifesting our physical experience. So it's asking, is what I'm doing actually supporting the life I want? And Mars is a little ahead of the Sun, and Venus is a little behind it this week. So this tells us something important because it tells us that action is already happening. Choices are already being made. And now awareness and values are catching up to that. So you might feel like you're already in motion this week. Things are already moving. Deadlines, plans, expectations, they're not waiting for you to feel ready. They're just already here. They're already happening. They're already in momentum. So this week becomes more about paying attention to how you're moving through that. So Mars in Capricorn this week is about how you're spending your energy. Because Mars is, as we know, about effort, about drive, momentum. And in Capricorn, Mars is very practical. It does not want any wasted effort. It's very efficient. So this is the kind of energy where small things matter. The little microscopic matters, the little habits, the tiny choices, the way you do your everyday little tasks. And it's really bringing our attention to things functioning on a very microscopic level. So for example, if you're rushing through your day, skipping meals, multitasking nonstop, feeling irritated by everything, it's not because you're lazy or you're doing something wrong or you're just getting it not right. It's a sign that your energy is being pulled in too many directions at once. Or it's like you're trying to carry groceries and the bags are tearing and you're still moving forward, but everything feels a lot harder than it needs to. Maybe your apples are falling down and out of the bag and rolling down the road or something. You have to turn around and go get it. It's a good week for noticing little moments and asking, is there a simpler way to do this? So the Sun in Capricorn is calling us to pay attention to what is it that we're building. So the Sun represents our conscious awareness. And in Capricorn, Our awareness turns toward responsibility and long-term choices. So you might find yourself thinking more about things like, what am I committed or what am I committed to? What feels like a burden? And what feels like it's even worth the effort? So sometimes we keep doing things just because we've always done them that way. And this week really shines a light on that. And it's not about judging it or anything. It's just about bringing our awareness to it so that we can see it in a different light. We can see it more clearly. And if something feels heavy or draining, that's useful information. And it doesn't mean you need to quit everything. It just means there's something in the system that isn't working smoothly. So let's look into that. And Venus moving into Capricorn this week gives us a more practical lens to our values. So Venus starts the week at the very end of Sagittarius. And then she moves into Capricorn the next day. So she starts off on December 24th in 29 degrees of Sagittarius. And on the 25th, she'll move into Capricorn. Early in the week, you might notice a shift around relationships, money, what even brings you pleasure. And things that sounded exciting before might suddenly feel less appealing. Really big ideas start to lose their shine if they don't actually fit into our everyday life. So as Venus moves into Capricorn, even attraction and what we're attracted to becomes more practical. It's less about like what sounds really good and is super shiny and fancy, and more about what you can actually rely on. So this can show up as, maybe wanting more consistency in relationships, or being more careful with spending, or realizing that something you enjoy also needs some type of boundaries to stay enjoyable. So with Mars, the Sun, and Venus all close together traveling this week, there's an attention being called here to do my actions, my attention, and my values all line up? Are they all in harmony? Are they all on the same page? And when they aren't, frustration shows up, or annoyance, or guilt, or stress, and these feelings of pushing but not really getting anywhere. And this actually isn't random, not at all. This is a sign. So it's about noticing where something's out of alignment and really digging into the microscopic level of that, knowing that it has profound effects in the macro. So this week we are also in a waxing moon cycle, which means things are slowly building. So the moon starts the week off in Aquarius, and you might notice yourself sort of stepping back and taking this more objective look at your life. Zooming out and kind of seeing the bigger picture and seeing where things don't quite make sense. And this can be very helpful. And as the week goes on, the moon moves into Taurus. So by the end of the week, feelings start becoming more physical. You're feeling things more in your body. Comfort matters more. Rest matters more. And if something isn't aligning or isn't sustainable, your body will tell you. So, and now we have Mercury. And Mercury is moving through Sagittarius this week, which means the mind wants meaning. It wants big picture thinking. It wants to discover the truth. And midweek, Mercury forms a supportive connection with Chiron in Aries in a trine. And this can show up as helpful conversations or personal insights, maybe around those old wounds, those old separation wounds from self. And you might understand this week why something still hurts. Or you might be able to talk about something very honestly and without it feeling overwhelming. It doesn't affect you emotionally to the same extent that it did before as you work through it. So this is a good time to journal, to have conversations, talk things through. And the goal doesn't need to be to fix it, but it's really just about naming it. Because as we name things consciously, we bring them into the light, bring them into our awareness. That takes on a healing all its own without us even needing to take action from there. So at the same time, Mercury is also forming awkward angles in the form of an in conjunction with Jupiter, retrograde in Cancer, as well as Uranus retrograde in Taurus. And this can feel like thinking a little bit too big or too fast. Ideas that maybe don't quite root or ground. Little bit more nervous energy. And if your thoughts are feeling scattered, a little bit run away on you, that's okay. Nothing needs to be done with that other than just noticing it. And by the end of the week, Mercury forms a square to Saturn in Pisces. And this can feel quite sobering, like there can be a little bit of mental fatigue with this. You can come up against some limits, some structures, and if your mind here feels a little heavy and maybe serious, I would just take it as a sign to slow down your thinking. Fewer inputs, fewer opinions. Maybe take a break from the social media or from all the constant stream of information and stimulation that we get, and just opt for a little more rest instead. So overall, the week is really about slowing down and paying attention to where things feel off, because that's such a big key as we learn to honestly master our energy. And this is what Capricorn really is a strong teacher for us in, and how we are manifesting and creating our experience. And in order to do that effectively, we need to understand where these little alignments in the microscopic are taking place. Where are we having these little leaks in our energy fields? Where are there still beliefs that are not serving us? Where are we still spinning our wheels? And really, really taking a look into that through just slowing down and paying more attention. So frustration, irritation, stress, guilt, all of these types of feelings that might come up are clues for you. And they point to places where your energy is being split, or just used ineffectively, used in a way that isn't quite working for you. So this week, instead of just pushing through and pushing harder like we tend to get caught up in, just try to get more curious instead. just notice when that comes up, and ask yourself some simple questions like, where does this feel harder than it should? Or noticing if something feels forced and why. That's a big one. That's a very big indicator, is as soon as you can recognize you're forcing something, catch that and ask yourself why. What small adjustment would make this easier? And sometimes we can be surprised by how small and simple the solution might be. It's simply just a different frame of mind, a different understanding, or a slight adjustment, a different approach. But if we don't take the time to slow down and really understand that, it will keep happening. We'll keep getting stuck in the same cycle. And this week is a powerfully supportive week to break those cycles. So thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to listen in. I really hope this has been supportive for you as you move through this final week of 2025. If you feel like you would like a little more guidance around working with Capricorn energy, especially with it being so front and center this week, I do offer a Capricorn Yin yoga class on my website. It's a nice complement to the moon's arc this week, starting with that bigger picture perspective and then gently bringing everything back into the body, helping you slow down and settle. So if that feels like it would support you, you can find it through the membership at enchantedastrology.ca. And I will be back next week with another episode.